The upcoming Arrowverse crossover, Crisis on Infinite Earth, is going to be the biggest one yet, and hopefully it's going to be the best one yet. I do think it will be, but I think there are a couple things that they maybe need to do that either will make it the best one yet, or just enhance the crossover. Some of these things are just things I've wanted to see in crossovers for a while. Other things are specific to the fact that it is based off Crisis on Infinite Earths, but these are 10 things that I do want to see. Now, things between 10 and 7, they're really not things that I would think that would be a deal breaker if they don't happen. It's really just between 6 and 1 that I really want to see in the crossover, but I wanted to make it a top 10 list. Still though, things from 10 to 7 I do want to see, and it would be awesome to see them, but I'm not going to really talk about them that much. So with that in mind, let's just begin the list with number 10. Number 10 is a bunch of team-up shots. I absolutely love team-up shots. I think they're so cool. The one in Invasion where they're about to face off against the Dominators, I think is such a cool shot. The ones in Crisis on Earth X, they didn't really do a great job with those. I mean, the one at the end I didn't like. The one, I think it was episode 2, that one was pretty cool, but that's just, that's something I want to see in the upcoming crossover. Something like in the end of Avengers Endgame, where all the Avengers come together and Captain America screams, "Avengers Assemble." I think something like that should happen in Crisis on Infinite Earths, as it is kind of the end game of the Arrowverse, and it would be so cool to see all the heroes in the Arrowverse that can appear in this crossover coming together, and Green Arrow or the Flash screams some sort of battle cry, and we have this awesome team-up shot. Number 9 is the return of the Hall of Justice, one of the many bases of operations of the Justice League. There's Mount Justice, probably most famously is the Watchtower, but also there's the Hall of Justice, which we saw for the first time in Invasion. It was never called the Hall of Justice, but it looks exactly like it, and that is what the Justice League of Invasion operated out of. It's owned by Barry Allen, and it's a pretty big building, so it's pretty insane that we haven't seen it since, especially since the quote-unquote Justice League have come together in 2 crossovers, Crisis on Earth X and Invasion, and I think the crossover that it should return in is the crossover that is upcoming, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and the reason I think it should return is because I think in this crossover, the Justice League should come together, and that is what number 8 is. The Justice League is the biggest superhero group in the DC universe, and I think that is something we should see in the upcoming crossover. I think that Green Arrow, the Flash, Superman, Martian Manhunter, probably also Supergirl, as well as Batwoman, and maybe the members of the Legends should all come together, and they should actually call themselves the Justice League. They've obviously come together before, and it felt like a Justice League, especially I think in Elseworlds, where we saw not only the Flash, Green Arrow, and Supergirl, but also Superman joined in, and they all fought Amazo. That really felt like the Justice League, but they never actually called themselves the Justice League, and that's something I really want to see in the upcoming crossover. Maybe at the end, the Flash, Superman, Martian Manhunter, Black Canary, Supergirl, maybe even if Batman appears, then Batman could all come together to form the Justice League. I didn't say Green Arrow because he is very clearly probably either going to die or retire in the upcoming crossover, so he can't really be a member, but I think maybe in honor of Green Arrow or something like that, because if they ever have to face off against something like this ever again, maybe like Darkseid or something, then they should be prepared, so they should form the Justice League, and that's 100% something I really want to see in the upcoming crossover. That's something I've really wanted to see in every crossover since Invasion. I wanted to see in Crisis on Earth X and Elseworlds, and now in Crisis on Infinite Earths, but I think this would probably be the best time to do it, at least as of now. I think probably the best time to do it would have been Invasion, but this is probably good as well. Number 7 is a race between Superman and the Flash. Now, I don't necessarily think that I want to see this more than the formation of the Justice League. I really don't, but I wanted to put the Justice League things together, the team-up shots, the Hall of Justice, and the formation of the Justice League. So this list is not really in 100% any specific order, but number 7 is something I wanted to see for a while, basically ever since Superman has been said to appear in a crossover, which is, again, a race between Superman and the Flash, one of the most iconic moments in DC, and now that we have a live-action universe that has both Superman and the Flash for the second time, there was also the same thing in the DCEU, and we did get kind of a race between Superman and the Flash, but this would be so much better, as I think the Flash is a much better version of the Flash, and although this might be a controversial opinion, I do like this version of Superman more than Henry Cavill, so this is something that I really want to see. Number 6 is something that I really do think will happen, which is a fight between the Trinity of the Arrowverse and the Anti-Monitor, in the vein of also from Endgame, where we saw Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor face off against Thanos by themselves. It's such an awesome scene, and it really brought the entirety of the MCU together. That's really something I want to see in the Arrowverse as well. Whether this quote-unquote Trinity is Green Arrow, the Flash, and Supergirl, or maybe it includes Superman as well, just like the Amazo fight from Elseworlds. I think maybe it should include Superman just to make him feel more like a Justice League, but I would not be upset if it was just the Flash, Green Arrow, and Supergirl, the Trinity of the Arrowverse, facing off against the Anti-Monitor in a fight that they do lose, but it's something that I do think that will happen, and it would be really cool, again, in the vein of Avengers Endgame. Number 5 is various character deaths. Now, we know that Oliver Queen will almost definitely be dying in this crossover. In the comics, both Barry Allen and Kara Zor-El died, the other 2 members of the Trinity, so it's very clear that this crossover is very Arrowverse oriented, or at least what they've set up. I mean, they have both Supergirl and the Flash, the 2 most prominent characters in the Arrowverse aside from the Green Arrow, and they're using the Green Arrow as the death, but I don't think that the characters from the Crisis should die in this crossover, as it would be maybe a little bit too predictable, and also their shows are continuing, so I don't really think anybody's going to expect them to stay dead, but I think that other characters from those shows should maybe die in the crossover. I think this crossover should have by far the biggest stakes of any crossover so far. The only time somebody died in a crossover so far was in Crisis on Earth X when Martin Stein died, but I think in this upcoming crossover they should have much bigger stakes, and there should be a full-on war with actual deaths. I think maybe one character from each show should die. We have Oliver Queen from Arrow. On Supergirl, James Olsen is leaving the show in this season, so I think he should die in the crossover. It said that he's dying in the first half of Supergirl Season 5, and that is Crisis on Infinite Earths is going to be a part of the first half, so I think that could be the goodbye to the character. I think that Supergirl doesn't really kill off their main characters very often, so maybe this would be a little bit surprising, but it's definitely something that I think should happen. On Legends of Tomorrow, just the fact that I don't like her, I think Mona Wu should die. I think she adds absolutely nothing towards Legends of Tomorrow, but also she takes away from it because she's a terrible character, and while it wouldn't be an emotional death, it would certainly be a satisfying one. And finally, from The Flash, I think the character that should die is probably Cisco Ramon, sacrificing his life to save some other thing. I think that the fact that he gave away his powers and he's trying to live a happy life, it probably doesn't mean anything good for the character, so maybe he should die in the upcoming crossover. But overall, I think this crossover should have very big stakes, and multiple characters should die, not just Oliver Queen. Now, obviously, Oliver would be the biggest death, but I think other characters should be killed off in this crossover as well, just for the stakes, just to make it very intense. I think this crossover should definitely be darker than crossovers so far, as it'll be the first one to have more than one death, and only the second one to ever have a death, so that's definitely something that I really think should happen. Number 4 is the completion of the DC Universe, which involves a couple things. Now, the Arrowverse over the years has definitely incorporated a lot of DC characters, and I think it did a relatively good job, at least in what it was given the ability to do. They weren't able to do to use Batman or Aquaman or Wonder Woman or Shazam or Superman for a lot of it, but from what they were given, I think they did a good job, even having some references, confirming Batman exists, going to Themyscira, mentioning Atlantis. I think they did a good job at that, but I think in Crisis on Infinite Earths, they should go all in with all of these characters. Batman, who has been mentioned, should debut in this crossover, which I don't think will happen, but I think he should. Maybe he should debut before this crossover in Batwoman Season 1, but I think that having a Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover without Batman would be very weird. Similarly, they should have Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Shazam be introduced in this crossover. Maybe not as big roles. I don't think they should have big roles, but they should just appear and just be in the background. And finally, something that is very close to the Arrowverse, very similarly to Batman. Batman has just been a shadow looming over the Arrowverse for years, but then there's also Green Lantern, who has yet to be have any appearance in the Arrowverse. It's the only thing that I think that it really needs to be to complete the Arrowverse, as we have Atlantis and Themyscira and Batman, but there's never been any actual references to the Green Lantern Corps. There have been references to Hal Jordan and also John Diggle being a Green Lantern on a different universe, but never actually any confirmation of the Green Lantern Corps existing, and I think that should maybe happen in this crossover. And obviously John Diggle, who is kind of Jon Stewart of Earth 1, should should get a Green Lantern ring, either in Arrow Season 8, or it would be really cool for a moment in Crisis on Infinite Earths for that to happen. So I think that Crisis on Infinite Earths should definitely complete the DC universe of the Arrowverse with Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Shazam, and Green Lantern, or maybe other DC characters, maybe possibly from other TV shows. Number 3 is the incorporation of other TV shows into the Arrowverse's multiverse. TV shows like Smallville and Black Lightning, which were on the CW, or are on the CW currently with Black Lightning. I think they should be incorporated into the Arrowverse's multiverse. I made a whole video about this, so I won't go into really lengthy here. But we knew that the 90s Flash was retroactively brought into the Arrowverse's multiverse through Elseworlds. There's been a lot of rumors that the Crisis on Infinite Earth crossover will bring in other TV shows as well. They're bringing Brandon Routh Superman, which is, I don't think it's from the same continuity, but that is definitely something, and I think they're probably going to do the same thing here. They have all these properties that would just fit perfectly because it's a multiverse. You could really do anything, saying that they were just from a different universe, and I think that's definitely something they should definitely do in this crossover. Crisis on Infinite Earths has been teased since the very first episode of The Flash, with the newspaper always teasing the 2024 crisis, which is where Barry and Eobard went back in time. Eobard wanted to kill Barry as a kid, but Barry didn't let him, so he killed Nora instead, and thus got stuck in the present day, and also thus created The Flash Season 1. The 2024 event was moved up to 2019 because of the events of The Flash Season 5, but still, I think that we should see that whole storyline play out in the crossover, which is number 2. I want to see Matt Letcher return as Reverse Flash, and so we can see him go back in time to kill Barry, and then he kills Nora instead. So we see, like, we go full circle with the show. I mean, it has to happen, or else it just wouldn't make any sense. We do know Tom Cavanaugh is returning as Eobard Thawne, but that would not make sense at all. The Eobard Thawne from the future, from after the Flash Season 1, from after the Flash Season 5, is going to be appearing, but I think the Eobard Thawne from before the Flash Season 1, which has to be played by Matt Letcher, should definitely be returning in this crossover. I don't know if he will. I think that if they wanted to bring Matt Letcher back, or they probably did, but if they could bring Matt Letcher back, they probably would have, as it would have made so much more sense for Matt Letcher to play Eobard Thawne in Crisis on Earth X and the Flash Season 5. Because that's his original face, and it really only makes sense for Tom Cavanaugh to play the character between when he takes Harrison Wells' face in the year, I think it's like 1999 or 2000, and when he gets erased from existence at the end of the Flash Season 1, then he should be played by Tom Cavanaugh. But everything before that and everything after that, like in what we're going to see in Crisis on Infinite Earths, and also what we already saw in Crisis on Earth X and the Flash Season 5, should have been and should be Matt Letcher. So what I think we should see in the upcoming crossover is Matt Letcher's Reverse Flash returning. I think it should maybe be right after the actual his time period. He should return from right after the events of his episode in the Flash Season 2, as that episode was from before the Flash Season 1, so that Reverse Flash just learned what time period the Flash is from, so now he comes back, now in 2019, he fights the Flash, learns his identity, and now that he knows the identity of Barry Allen, his whole motivation would probably change. I mean, before that, he'd probably team up with the Anti-Monitor and the Shadow Demons, as that is something that we know is almost definitely going to happen. So now that he knows Barry Allen's identity, his motivation changes, and he decides to go back in time and kill Barry as a kid. Barry obviously goes after him and stops him from killing young Barry, but enraged, Eobard Thawne kills Nora Allen instead. Thus, Eobard Thawne gets trapped in the present day, and whatever happens to Barry Allen after that, we don't know yet, but I'm guessing we're going to see in the crossover. Because of the timeline changes, it seems like Oliver Queen is going to be killed here or is going to disappear or something, Crisis on Infinite Earths, instead of Barry. And Barry, considering he still has a show to go back to, and considering it doesn't seem like the Flash Season 6 will be without Barry, then Barry will probably get back to 2019 in this new timeline, but Eobard Thawne still gets stuck in 2000 or 1999 or whatever it is, and thus we have the Flash Season 1. So that has to be, I think, Matt Letcher, and that really has to be something that happens. So that's really one of the biggest things that want to happen in Crisis on Infinite Earths. Number 1 is exactly what happens at the end of the comic book, which is the combination of the multiverse. At the end, the events of Crisis on Infinite Earth combines the entire multiverse into just one universe, and it kind of reboots everything. I think all the characters that we've ever met up until now, except for doppelgangers of the Earth 1 characters, all exist on the same universe, and there is no multiverse. That was the status quo of the DC universe for a very long time, until the multiverse returned, I think like 20 years later in the early 2000s, in Infinite Crisis Crisis. I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on that, but I think that's something we should be seeing in this crossover. It's always felt very weird that Supergirl and Superman are on a different universe to everyone on Earth 1. I mean, Superman, Supergirl, the Legion of Superheroes, Martian Manhunter, Miss Martian, all those characters should be on the same universe as the Earth 1 characters, and I think that Crisis on Infinite Earths is probably the way to do it. Combine the entirety of the multiverse, so every single character we've met that has been a part of the Arrowverse, again, except for the doppelgangers of the Earth 1 characters, because those characters would be the base of those characters in this multiverse. They would all exist in the same universe, and there wouldn't be any multiverse. I think that is probably something that is going to happen, or at least maybe on a smaller scale. I think at least Earth 1 and Earth 38 kind of have to be incorporated into the same universe, as again, it's so weird to me that the main Superman, Supergirl, Legion of Superheroes, and Martian Manhunter and other characters are in a different universe to the main Flash, Green Arrow, and Batman. It's just so weird. So I think that the entirety of the multiverse, or at least just one, Earth 1 and Earth 38, should be combined into just one universe. So anyway, that is it for my list. Let me know what things you want to see in the upcoming crossover in the comments down below, and which things from my list do you want to see the most. Let me know your thoughts, and if you like this video, maybe check out more Crisis on Infinite Earth videos that I've made, and as always, thanks for watching.